It started the night I couldn't sleep. I had always been a light sleeper, but that evening felt different. The hum of my fans sounded sharper, my room darker than usual, and the shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, when I noticed something strange on my nightstand. My phone, which I hadn't touched in hours, was blinking. A notification. I rubbed my eyes and reached for it, half expecting a random app update. But it wasn't an update. It was a file. A video file. The timestamp made no sense. It was recorded just a few minutes ago. I didn't remember recording anything. Hesitant, I tapped the video. The footage showed my bedroom. At first, everything seemed normal. The dim outline of my bed, the familiar clutter on the desk. Then, slowly, I realized it wasn't just my room being filmed, it was me. And I was asleep. I froze. My own body, breathing softly, eyes closed, unaware of the camera. But it wasn't a camera I could see. It hovered somewhere above me, capturing every angle. My heart started pounding. How could this happen? I didn't set up a camera. I don't even own a webcam. Then, something moved in the video. Not me, something else. A shadow flickered near the corner of the room, darker than the darkness itself. It didn't have a shape I could recognize. It wasn't human. It was waiting, watching. I could feel its presence in the room, even though I was awake, staring at my own sleeping form. I tried to convince myself it was a glitch, a weird bug in my phone's camera system. Maybe an app had activated some experimental feature, but then I noticed the timestamp again. The video kept recording, minute after minute, showing me dreaming. And in my dream, I wasn't alone. I saw flashes of things I didn't remember dreaming. A corridor of doors that led nowhere. A figure standing just out of reach, its face hidden, yet somehow familiar. I watched, paralyzed, as my dream self walked closer to it, whispered something I couldn't hear, and then woke up. But my real self didn't wake up yet. The video continued, capturing movements I couldn't explain. I reached for my phone to delete it, to erase whatever cursed file had appeared. But the moment I touched the screen, the shadow in the video turned toward me. Not toward the camera, but toward me. My pulse shot through my veins. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my phone. The figure paused, tilting its head as if it knew I was watching, as if it had always known. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at that file, and wondering how a dream could record itself. How something from my subconscious could be captured, frozen in pixels, yet somehow alive. Morning came. The sunlight should have comforted me, but even in daylight, I could feel it lingering. That shadow, that unseen presence. I checked my phone again. The file was still there, waiting, and beneath the first video, another one had appeared. A second recording. It wasn't just my first night anymore. It was something that had started, something that wouldn't stop. I wanted to delete it. I wanted to throw the phone away. But some part of me needed to watch, to see what would happen next. Because when your dreams record themselves, you realize that sleep isn't a place to rest. It's a place where someone, or something, can watch you, learn from you, and maybe even follow you back into the waking world. And that first night was only the beginning. I thought I could ignore it. I told myself it was a fluke, a one-time glitch. But the moment I opened my gallery that morning, I realized I was wrong. There were more videos. Not just one, not two, dozens. Each time-stamped at different hours of the night, each showing my sleeping self. But it wasn't just me sleeping anymore. The first few videos were subtle, slight movements, my hands twitching, my eyelids flickering. Nothing I hadn't noticed before. But then the footage began to show things I knew hadn't happened. My blanket would shift on its own, as if a weight had pressed down on it. My closet door, which I always left closed, would be slightly ajar in the video, even though it had been shut when I fell asleep. I tried to explain it logically. Perhaps I'd sleepwalk without realizing it. Maybe my cat had nudged things around. But as I scrolled, a chill crept up my spine. One video showed me sitting up abruptly, staring at something in the corner of the room. My face was pale, eyes wide, but I had no memory of waking at all. Then I noticed the faintest distortion in the video, a shadow that shouldn't have been there. It moved across the walls, stretching and shrinking unnaturally. I paused the footage, zooming in, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the camera. But the closer I looked, the more impossible it became. The shadow moved independently of any object in my room. It was deliberate, watching, waiting. Some nights, the footage captured dream fragments, snippets of landscapes I didn't recognize. A foggy forest, a house I'd never seen, hallways that twisted in impossible ways. And always, in the corner of the frame, that shadow. It seemed to know I was watching, tilting or stretching as though curious. The most disturbing recordings were the ones where I wasn't alone. I saw figures standing just out of reach of my dream self. Sometimes they were human, but with faces that shimmered and shifted, features that made no sense. Other times, they were something else. Shapes that should not exist, moving with jerky, unnatural motions, whispering sounds that didn't exist when I listened with my own ears. Yet the phone's microphone captured every detail. I tried showing the footage to friends. Each time, their faces would go pale. They'd glance around nervously, then mutter that it looked wrong. "It's like someone else is in the room," one friend whispered. But even as I listened to their interpretations, I felt the same prickling sense of dread I felt alone. Because I knew the truth. I wasn't alone. Not in my dreams. Not in my room. The videos began to influence my waking life. I'd see movements in the corners of my vision that weren't there, hear faint whispers that faded when I turned to look. I would wake with scratches on my arms, bruises forming overnight, things that had no explanation. Each new video seemed to escalate the intensity, as if the recordings were learning, observing me, and maybe even controlling the thin line between my dreams and reality. I kept watching, though. I couldn't stop myself. Something deep inside craved answers, even as my fear grew. Every time I opened the gallery, I felt the presence in the room, as if the shadow from the videos had slipped into the waking world, just enough to remind me that it was there. And then I found a video I didn't remember recording at all. Not from that night. Not from any night. The timestamp read future, hours that hadn't happened yet. And in it, I saw myself, wide-eyed, screaming silently at something crawling toward me. The shadow was there, closer than ever, and this time, it wasn't just in the corner. It was reaching. I put the phone down, shaking. But the moment I tried to leave the room, I heard it, a soft, deliberate whisper. My name, from nowhere. I realized then that these videos were no longer just recordings. They were warnings. And if I kept watching, I feared I would see something I could never unsee. By the third night, I wasn't just afraid of the videos, I was terrified of the camera itself. Every recording began to feel alive, as if the lens had a mind of its own. I started noticing patterns. The shadow, it wasn't just in the corner anymore. It was closer, lingering near the edges of the frame, sometimes creeping toward me while I slept. One night, I set my phone down across the room, determined to prove I wasn't imagining it. I hit record and left. When I returned, trembling, I opened the video. My bedroom looked normal at first. Then, movement. The shadow had emerged from the darkness. It stretched along the wall, growing taller, its form darker than black, a void that swallowed light. And then, it paused, and I swear it looked directly at the camera, like it knew it was being watched. I tried to convince myself I was hallucinating. Sleep deprivation, paranoia, surely it was just my mind playing tricks. But the next night, it happened again. And the night after that, it was closer still. Sometimes, I would see shapes in the videos that weren't even in my room. Long fingers brushing the ceiling, faces pressed against the walls, eyes staring at me from impossible angles. I began to experiment. I placed small objects around my room, a chair, a lamp, even a mirror, hoping the recordings would capture something I could identify. The shadow ignored the objects. Instead, it moved with purpose, avoiding obstacles, sometimes appearing reflected in the mirror before vanishing. It was learning, adjusting, tracking me. One video showed it reaching toward my sleeping self with long, distorted fingers, yet when I woke, my arms were folded across my chest, untouched. Another caught a whisper of sound, low, guttural, like 1,000 voices murmuring at once, but the room was silent when I listened. It was mocking me, teasing me, reminding me it existed outside the boundaries of normal reality. I couldn't tell if it wanted something from me, or if it wanted to terrify me. But the more I watched, the more I realized that the shadow wasn't a passive observer. It was sentient, It knew I was watching. It knew I feared it. And every video seemed to escalate, as if it were feeding on my terror. By this point, I couldn't sleep without the lights on. My dreams became fractured, haunted by figures I didn't understand, hallways that twisted impossibly, and always that shadow, lingering, waiting. And every morning, a new video would appear on my phone, capturing moments that hadn't yet happened. It was no longer enough to simply watch. I was being watched in return. And I began to dread opening the gallery, fearing that one day, the shadow might step out of the lens entirely, because it already knew where I was. By the fourth night, I couldn't tell where my dreams ended and reality began. The videos were no longer confined to sleep. They began appearing during the day, on my phone, on my computer, even on the TV when I hadn't turned it on. Each recording showed events that hadn't yet happened. Small things at first, a dropped pen, a flickering light. But soon, the events became impossible. Furniture shifting, doors opening by themselves, shadows stretching across walls in ways that defied physics. I started noticing details in waking life that mirrored the videos. A hallway in my apartment seemed longer than it should be, corners darker, corners where I could swear something moved. Sometimes, I would glimpse a figure in the corner of my vision, just for a moment, only for it to vanish when I turned. And when I opened a video of that same night, the shadow was there, closer, almost triumphant, as if it had been watching me all along. Sleep became unbearable. Every night, I feared closing my eyes. I tried forcing myself awake, but exhaustion always won. And in those brief, broken moments of sleep, the videos captured more than dreams. They captured me in my worst fears. I would wake drenched in sweat, seeing the shadows from my dreams spilling into my apartment. Reflections in mirrors seemed wrong, distorted, flickering between normal and something else entirely. I stopped leaving my apartment. Friends stopped calling. I didn't answer. I feared that even human presence couldn't shield me from what was happening. It was as if the recordings were a bridge, and the shadow on the other side wanted in. I began keeping a log, noting every strange occurrence, every video that seemed to predict the next. The lines between what I experienced awake and what was captured asleep blurred until I no longer trusted my senses. One morning, I woke to find the living room rearranged. A chair was against the wall, facing my bed, though I had never moved it. On the coffee table lay my phone, recording. And on the screen, a new video played. Me, asleep in that very bed, staring wide-eyed at the ceiling. But this time, I could see the shadow in the corner of the room, inches from my face, smiling. Or at least, I think it was smiling. I realized then that the shadow wasn't just in my dreams or in my videos. It had begun to bleed into reality. And every new recording made it stronger, bolder. My waking hours had become a continuation of my nightmares. My reality was a loop of fear, each day predicted and manipulated by what had started as recordings of my sleep. I started hearing whispers constantly, soft, unintelligible murmurs that made my skin crawl. Sometimes they were my name, other times phrases from my dreams. And every time I turned on my phone, a new video awaited me, showing things I hadn't yet experienced, guiding me like a puppet in my own apartment. I couldn't escape. I couldn't stop watching. Because if I did, I feared the shadow might cross fully into my world, unbound by lens, unbound by sleep. And by now, I understood something terrifying. The videos weren't just recordings. They were a blueprint, a map, a warning, and the shadow was following it. By the fifth night, I knew I was no longer in control. Every video that appeared on my phone, every shadow captured in its frames, was a countdown to something I couldn't stop. The recordings weren't just documenting my life, they were rewriting it. Every replay of a dream or event seemed to leave a mark, shifting reality in subtle but terrifying ways. I tried leaving. I packed a bag, grabbed my phone, and fled the apartment. But everywhere I went, the videos followed. My phone would light up with a new file, and in it, I was already there, asleep, my eyes wide with fear. The shadow lingered in every frame, closer than ever. And the most horrifying part? It was grinning. Not a human smile, but a smile full of malice, intelligence, intelligence and anticipation. I attempted to destroy the phone. I smashed it against the floor, soaked it in water, even threw it into the trash. But the next day, a new device sat on my nightstand. My name was on the screen, and there it was again, the recordings, continuing as though nothing had been broken. I realized then that this wasn't about technology. The videos weren't digital, they were alive. And so was the shadow. I tried to fight back in small ways. I covered the camera lenses with tape, blocked corners of the room with furniture, slept in different positions, even on the floor. Nothing mattered. Every night, the shadow found a way into the frame. Every video, every replay, showed me struggling, screaming, reaching, and failing. And then came the moment I couldn't deny. I was watching a video from that morning, my morning, and I saw myself watching a video. A loop. Endless layers of me watching, trapped in the recordings. The shadow was there, hovering, pointing, as if laughing at my confusion. My hands moved on their own in the video, reaching toward the shadow, but the shadow moved faster, retreating just out of reach. I understood then, I was trapped. Not just in my dreams, not just in my reality, but in the recordings themselves. The videos were a prison, and the shadow was the warden. Every replay reinforced the bars. Every new recording tightened the walls. I wasn't just being watched. I was being rewritten, my life folded into the endless loop of my own terror. I can't tell you how long I've been trapped like this. Days, weeks, months. Time has no meaning when every moment is captured, replayed, and manipulated by something that shouldn't exist. All I know is that the phone is always there, waiting, glowing, inviting me to watch. And I can't stop, because if I look away, I might disappear entirely. So here I am, leaving this recording as a warning. If you find a video titled, "When My Dreams Record Themselves," don't watch it. Don't open it. Don't fall into the trap I did. Because once the replay begins, there is no escape. And the shadow will always be waiting.